The baby wouldn't stop crying. The wind howled across the barren trail like a wounded coyote, carrying dust that stung Wyatt Calder's eyes as he tightened his grip on the reins. His free hand clutched the bundle against his chest, a swaddled infant whose tiny sobs clawed at what was left of Wyatt's tattered soul. He rode into Redemption Hollow at sundown, a place that wore its name like a cruel joke. Shacks leaned sideways, battered by time and bullets. Soot-streaked windows stared like blind eyes. And everywhere, the smell: gunpowder, sweat, and dry rot. Wyatt's face was drawn, half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, shadowing a week's worth of unshaved stubble. His coat hung off him like dead weight, once the color of chestnut leather, now caked in trail grime and dried blood. Not his own, not all of it. He dismounted slowly in front of the general store, knees stiff, exhaustion seeping from every joint. The baby stirred, let out a sharp wail that turned a few heads. Wyatt cleared his throat, hoping to muster dignity. "Need milk," he rasped to the nearest man, a hefty rancher with cracked knuckles and chewing tobacco stains on his shirt. The man gave him a long look, then spat. "Ain't no milk here, cowboy. Try the saloon." Wyatt's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. He turned toward the saloon, where piano music stumbled through off-key notes and laughter crackled like bad timber. He pushed open the swinging doors, stepping into a world, slick with liquor and stale heat. Faces turned. He was the outsider, dirt-smeared, wild-eyed, clutching a screaming infant like a gunslinger held a dying partner. "Hell's this?" a voice called from the bar. Wyatt walked to the counter, each step stiff with pride and shame. "My baby," he said. "Ain't had milk in 2 days." The bartender, a wiry man with a crooked mustache, stared. "We serve whiskey, not wet nurses." "I got coin." Wyatt dropped $2 on the bar, the last of what he had. "Anything. Powdered, canned, goat milk, anything." "Can't help you." The baby's cry pierced again, a sharp, desperate sound. Wyatt swallowed hard. A man nearby chuckled. "Mighty bold, showing up here with a wailer and no woman." Wyatt turned, slow and dangerous. "She died." The room went quiet for a beat. Then the bartender gave a shrug. "Ain't my business. Best take that child out of here before folks get ornery." Wyatt picked up the coins. One had blood on it. He hadn't noticed before. He turned and left. The door slapped behind him like a verdict. Outside, the sun had sunk below the ridge, leaving a purplish glow that softened nothing. He leaned against his horse, heart hammering. The baby's cries were weakening, less fire, more fatigue. That scared him worse than the hunger. "I told her I'd take care of you," he muttered. "But I don't know how." He pressed his lips to the baby's head. The skin was too hot. Someone had been watching. Rosalie Vaughn stood just beyond, the porch light of her apothecary barn, hands in her skirt pockets, her eyes sharp and unflinching. She had the sort of face the plains couldn't erode: sturdy cheekbones, intelligent eyes, and a mouth that rarely smiled unless it meant it. "I've got milk," she said. Wyatt spun, hand to revolver out of instinct. Then, seeing her, he relaxed but didn't lower his guard. "What kind of milk?" "The kind your baby needs," she said plainly. "And you can stop reaching for that gun. I don't feed folks I have to shoot." "I can pay." "I didn't ask." She turned and walked inside. Wyatt stared after her, unsure whether he'd just been insulted or rescued. But when the baby whimpered again, he followed. Inside, the barn smelled of lavender, soap, and worn pine. Not like the outside world. Rosalie moved with quiet purpose, already pulling a rocking chair closer to the hearth. She unwrapped a thick shawl, revealing a blouse that had been loosened, ready. Wyatt hesitated, frozen by the intimacy of the moment. I didn't mean for... Your baby needs to eat." She sat and held out her arms. "Come here." He looked away as he handed the bundle over. "He's not used to strangers. I'm not a stranger to hunger." She cradled the baby, shifted slightly, and began to nurse. The baby latched instinctively, greedily. The sound that came next, quiet sucking, then a contented sigh, hit Wyatt like a bullet. He turned his face, jaw twitching. Rosalie's voice was soft. "What's his name?" "Matthew," Wyatt said. She named him before. Rosalie nodded but didn't press. She looked down at the child with something akin to reverence. "I lost one," she said. Wyatt met her eyes. They were clear, steady, holding more truth than he'd heard in weeks. "A year ago," she went on. "Fever took him in 3 days. Buried him under the cottonwood. I'm sorry. Folks say we shouldn't talk about it. Folks say a lot of things." They sat in silence, save for the crackle of the hearth and the baby's soft noises. "You got family?" she asked. "No." "Where are you headed?" "Nowhere. Just away from where we were." Rosalie nodded again. Her face betrayed no judgment, only understanding. When the baby finished nursing, she gently lifted him to her shoulder, patting his back with a practiced rhythm. A soft burp escaped. Wyatt couldn't look away. He didn't know why, but he said, "I tried giving him water. Even sugar water. Nothing worked. Thought he'd die before I got here." "Babies need more than water," Rosalie said gently. "They need warmth, touch. A mother's body can't be replaced, but sometimes it can be borrowed." Wyatt blinked hard. His throat hurt. She handed the baby back, who now lay quiet, drifting. "Stay tonight," she said. "I've got space in the loft. Clean blankets. I don't want trouble. Trouble's already here." She turned to the window. "You brought it with you." Wyatt stiffened. "What do you mean?" She didn't look at him. "That horse you rode in on has a bullet grazed near the flank. You've been running." Wyatt said nothing. "And you carry like someone who's used that iron more than once." "I don't want to," he said, voice low. "Not anymore." Rosalie faced him. "Then don't." He nodded slowly. His limbs were shaking now, not from fear but exhaustion. "You're safe tonight," she said. "But don't mistake this town for kind. It'll take what it can and spit the rest. I've seen worse. I doubt that." He climbed into the loft as the baby slept between them in a makeshift crib lined with lamb's wool. Rosalie returned to her chair and sat quietly, eyes lost in the fire. Outside, hooves approached. A rider moved slow through the street, silhouetted against the moonlight. He paused near the barn, hat tilted low. Rosalie's fingers curled into the arm of her chair. Wyatt noticed and stood, hand near his gun. The rider didn't speak, didn't move, just watched, then turned and rode off, vanishing into the night like a ghost. "Who was that?" Wyatt asked. Rosalie's voice was a whisper. "He's come, back." Wyatt didn't press for more. The baby stirred in his sleep and Rosalie walked over, laying a hand gently on the child's chest until he calmed. The fire crackled. The night deepened. Somewhere a wolf howled, and inside that barn, between a woman who had lost everything and a man trying not to lose the last thing he had, silence settled. Not peace, but something close. And that was enough to make Wyatt stay. For now. Dawn came soft and pale, seeping through the slats of the barn and painting the room in slow golden strokes. Wyatt awoke to the smell of baking bread and the sound of soft humming, notes caught between a lullaby and morning. He sat up slowly, on the straw bed, muscles stiff from sleep, one hand instinctively reaching for the revolver beside him. The baby, Matthew, lay nestled in a wool blanket at his side, warm and peaceful, chest rising in steady rhythm. For the first time in days, there was no cry to jolt him awake. Just the quiet murmur of domestic life beyond the loft edge. Below, Rosalie moved with measured grace. She had tied back her hair, sleeves rolled, hands working dough on a worn wooden table. Light kissed the curve of her neck, the strength in her forearms. There was something solemn in her focus, as if making bread were a ritual, not a chore. Wyatt descended the ladder silently, boots soft against the rungs. He didn't want to break the moment, didn't want to admit he wasn't sure how to live in something this normal anymore. "You sleep like a stone," Rosalie said without turning. "Used to sleep with one eye open. You didn't need to." still. Did. She nodded, wiped her hands on a cloth and poured him coffee from a blackened tin pot. It ain't fresh, but it's strong. He took it, nodding his thanks. You always feed strangers like this? No, she said, but you ain't a stranger anymore. Matthew stirred and Rosalie instinctively moved to take him. Wyatt held back. Let me. She watched as he cradled the child, gentle but awkward. You never done that before her, huh? No need. We thought we had time. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. Loss wore a face everyone recognized. By mid-morning, Wyatt stepped outside to tend the horse. The sky was wide and merciless, stretching across the plain like a challenge. As he worked, a horseman rode into view, kicking up a loose tail of dust. Wyatt narrowed his eyes. The rider's posture was too deliberate, his path too straight. Rosalie came out wiping her hands on her apron. Her breath hitched as she recognized the man. It's Clem, she said. Her voice was flat, but Wyatt caught the faint tremor. Clem Ryder reined in his black gelding with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He dismounted slowly, arms wide, mockingly casual. Well, look what crawled back, he said. Rosie, darlin', ain't you a sight? Don't call me that. Clem's grin widened. He glanced at Wyatt, then at the baby in his arms. Now this is new. Didn't know you'd taken in strays. Wyatt stepped forward. You got business here? Clem chuckled. Easy there, buckaroo. I'm just visiting a lady I used to know. Though seems she's moved on to war veterans with baggage. Wyatt's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Rosalie's voice was ice. What do you want, Clem? I heard a familiar name's been snooping round Redemption Hollow. Thought I'd check if the rumors were true. He turned his attention back to Wyatt. Wyatt Calder, wasn't it? Rode with Flint Bragg in the range dispute 3 winters back. Wyatt didn't blink. I rode. Then I stopped. Folks say you didn't stop soon enough. They say you lit the fire that burned down Preacher Grady's place with his boys. Inside. That's a lie. Maybe. Maybe not. Point is, folks remember, this town might forgive some sins but not murdering children. Rosalie stepped between them. That's enough. Clem tipped his hat slow and mocking. Be seeing you, Rosie. And you, Calder. Don't go getting too comfortable. He mounted and rode off, leaving the echo of hooves and suspicion in his wake. Wyatt exhaled sharply. You know him well? Well, enough to know he doesn't show up unless he wants something. What did he want today? She looked at him. To make sure the past never stays buried. That night, tension hung in the barn like smoke. Rosalie nursed the baby again, her expression unreadable. Wyatt paced near the window, ears straining for any sound beyond the wind. You didn't kill those boys, did you? She asked quietly. No. She nodded once. I believe you. I was there when it happened, he admitted. But I tried to stop it. Flint wouldn't listen. By the time I got the boys out, the roof was already coming down. Only one made it. Is that why you ran? I didn't run. He looked at her sharply, then sighed. I left. Couldn't look their mother in the eye after that. Rosalie gently rocked Matthew. You're not the first man to try to outrun guilt. I ain't outrunning it, he said. I carry it like a damn saddle. She looked up. You'll have to let go of it eventually. Maybe, but not today. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't hostile. It was the kind of quiet that made room for understanding. Outside, footsteps crunched on gravel. Then voices, low, angry. Wyatt and Rosalie froze. He moved toward the door, gun drawn. She grabbed his arm. Don't shoot unless you have to. He nodded. They slipped outside into the darkness. 3 men stood in front of the saloon, talking in hushed tones. Clem was among them. One held a rifle. They're stirring trouble, Wyatt said. They'll come here next. We should leave. No. Rosalie's voice was hard. This is my home. I'm done running too. The next morning, a flyer was nailed to the post outside the sheriff's office. The paper fluttered in the wind. Wyatt's face stared back, worn and hollow, above bold letters. Wanted, Wyatt called her $500. Dead or alive, Wyatt stood frozen. Rosalie stepped beside him. "Where'd they dig that up?" he asked. "Does it matter?" He looked at her. "I should go. I'm putting you and Matthew in danger." She shook her head. "You're not leaving. Not like this." "I won't be the reason you lose everything again. You're not. I ain't worth dying for." Rosalie looked him straight in the eye. "That baby thinks you are, and I'm starting to think the same." Something in his chest cracked. Not pain, not quite hope, just the slow grind of a man changing. Back at the barn, Matthew cried again. Not desperate this time, just hungry. Rosalie reached for him, but Wyatt stepped in. "I got him." She watched as he cradled the child, rocking with a rhythm he hadn't known he possessed. "What if I can't protect him?" he asked. "You will," she said. "Because you care enough to try." They stood there, quiet, but not alone. Outside, the wind carried dust and the scent of trouble, but inside, for now, there was warmth. There was bread cooling on the table, a child sleeping between two broken people slowly mending. And outside, in the shadows beyond the barn, Clem Ryder watched, with narrowed eyes. He smiled, slow and mean. This wasn't over. Not yet. The night was thick with heat and silence. Not even the crickets dared to sing. Wyatt lay on the hayloft floor, one arm draped protectively over Matthew's crib. Below, the fire in the hearth had burned low, casting long, flickering shadows across the barn walls. Rosalie sat in her rocking chair, sharpening a knife with steady strokes, steel against steel, slow and deliberate. Wyatt couldn't sleep. He kept hearing Clem's voice, coiled like a snake in his thoughts. The bounty. Flyer hadn't just stirred the town. It had awakened something darker. People who once looked the other way now watched with suspicion. Shopkeepers stopped talking when Wyatt passed. Kids were pulled indoors. The storm hadn't broken yet, but he could feel it swelling. He climbed down the ladder, boots hitting the floor softly. Rosalie didn't look up. "Thought you were asleep." "I was. Bad dream woke me." "You gonna tell me?" Wyatt stared into the fire. "It ain't the ones where I'm dying that get me. It's the ones where she's still alive." Smiling, holding Matthew like none of this ever happened. "I wake up thinking I can turn around and she'll be there." Rosalie said nothing for a long while. Just kept sharpening that blade, the rhythm, comforting in its quiet violence. "I used to dream about my boy too," she said finally. "In the dreams he runs through the cotton fields, his laughs louder than the wind. Then I wake up, and there's nothing but silence." She paused. "Grief don't lessen, it just changes its shape." Wyatt looked at her. The way the fire caught in her eyes made her seem like something carved from old iron and heartbreak. "How do you stand it?" "By holding what's left, and refusing to let the world take more than it already has." He nodded slowly. "You're braver than I am." She met his gaze. "No. Just tired of being afraid." Morning brought no comfort. The sky was a flat, unforgiving gray, and the air held the tension of a drawn gun. Wyatt rode out early, taking a circuit around the edge of town, scanning for any sign Clem had left. He hadn't. If anything, Clem had spread his poison farther. The blacksmith refused to shoe Wyatt's horse. The feed store clerk barely grunted. When he asked for oats, everyone knew about the bounty now. He returned to the barn with his jaw set and his thoughts spinning. Rosalie was in the garden behind the barn, harvesting herbs with practiced hands. Matthew lay in a cradle beside her, shaded by a stitched-together canopy. Wyatt dismounted and approached, glancing around. "They're turning," he said quietly. "The town. It's happening fast." She didn't stop her work. "Clem's got a way of rotting things from the inside. He's not going to stop." "No, he won't." "I should face him." Rosalie looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "He wants a fight. He wants blood. If I don't give it to him, he'll come here. He'll use you, or the boy. You're not walking into a trap alone. It's my past. It's our present now." That silenced him. For the first time, the weight he carried didn't feel like his alone. Later that day, Rosalie fetched the sheriff, a weary man named Nolan Tate, who had long since traded justice for silence. He arrived with spurs jingling and a wariness in his step, glancing at Wyatt with tired eyes. "You got half the town spooked," he said, not unkindly. "I'm not here for trouble," Wyatt replied. "But I'll answer if it comes to me." Nolan scratched his beard. "Clem's got deep roots, friends in low places. If he pushes this bounty, I won't be able to hold folks off long." "Then don't. Just tell me when and where." Rosalie stepped forward. "You can't mean to let them lynch him." "I don't mean anything," Nolan said. "But if you want peace, it might mean leaving. Disappear before the fire starts." Wyatt nodded slowly. "I've been running for 3 years. I won't run again." Nolan hesitated, then turned and left, hat low over his eyes. That night, Wyatt prepared for war. He cleaned his revolver in silence, eyes dark with resolve. Rosalie packed a satchel with supplies, bandages, tinctures, dried meat, and set it near the barn door. Neither spoke of why. Matthew cried once, then fell into deep sleep again, oblivious to the tension rising around him. At midnight, the barn door creaked open. Wyatt and Rosalie turned as one, guns half drawn. But it wasn't Clem. It was the boy. He couldn't have been more than 16, scrawny with a mop of dust-blonde hair and wide eyes. He held his head in both hands, nervous. "My pa, he's with Clem," the boy stammered. "They're planning something. Tonight, they're meeting behind the saloon." Wyatt stepped forward. "Why are you telling me this?" The boy looked down. "'Cause Clem's wrong, and my ma says no baby should pay for a grown man's sins." Wyatt nodded. "What's your name?" "Jonah." "Thank you, Jonah. Now go home." The boy fled into the night, legs moving faster than his shadow. "Rosalie," turned to Wyatt, "we have to act." Wyatt's voice was cold steel. "We will." By 2 a.m., the town was asleep or drunk. Wyatt and Rosalie moved like ghosts through the alleys, shadows draped in silence. Behind the saloon, lantern light flickered. Voices murmured. Guns gleamed. Wyatt signaled for Rosalie to stay back. He stepped out into the open. Clem turned, grinning. Well, well, the prodigal coward arrives." Wyatt didn't flinch. "You want blood, Clem? Here I am." Clem spread his arms. So noble, so predictable. "I'm not here for speeches. Let's end it." Clem drew fast, but Wyatt was faster. One shot rang out, sharp, final. Clem staggered, clutching his side, shock painted across his face. You shot me." Wyatt stepped forward, revolver still raised. "I'm done letting men like you dictate my life." Clem fell to his knees, then collapsed. His men didn't move. Not. One of them had drawn. A silence deeper than any gunshot settled over the alley. Rosalie stepped forward, pistol in hand, covering the others. "You follow him, you end up like him," she said. "Or you walk away. Now." The men looked at one another, then slowly backed off, fading into the darkness one by one. Wyatt holstered his gun. His hands were steady. For the first time in years, they didn't shake. Back at the barn, dawn began to rise. Rosalie rocked Matthew in the cradle while Wyatt sat nearby, eyes lost in thought. "You did it," she said. "No," he replied. "We did." She looked at him. "What happens now?" He smiled faintly. "I reckon we see what a new day feels like." Outside, Redemption Hollow stirred. A town changed, not by a hero, but by a man who refused to run, and a woman who reminded him why he couldn't. And for the first time, the future didn't seem like a place to fear. It felt like home. The morning after the shootout, Redemption Hollow held its breath. Word traveled faster than the wind on the plains. Wyatt Calder had killed Clem Ryder. Some said it was self-defense. Others whispered it was long overdue. But no one dared look Wyatt in the eye that day. Not out of hate, out of something more complicated. Fear, maybe. Respect, even. Wyatt didn't care which. He wasn't seeking redemption in this town. He just wanted a place where Matthew could grow up without sleeping under a roof that might burn down before morning. He wanted silence without danger behind it. He wanted peace, not for himself, but for what was left of his world. That peace wouldn't come easy. Rosalie cleaned the barn that morning like it were Sunday, humming under her breath as she swept away the remnants of dirt and blood. Wyatt stood outside watching the sun crawl up over the flat hills. He wasn't wearing his gun. He knew if anyone wanted to kill him now, they'd try in daylight, and they'd make it count. Inside, Matthew laughed, a gurgling, bubbly sound so pure it could break a man. Wyatt turned at the sound and something deep in his chest softened. It wasn't relief exactly. It was something older, something buried since before his wife had died. Love that didn't come with guilt attached. Rosalie stepped into the light, apron streaked with flour. He's teething. Wyatt smiled faintly. Sounds like he's winning the fight. He's stubborn, she said. Gets that from his father. I hope not. I don't want him to grow up always looking over his shoulder. He won't, Rosalie said. Not if we raise him right. The word we caught him off guard. He looked at her, and there was no doubt in her eyes. She meant it, but peace, like anything worth having, had to be earned. By midday, another rider entered town. This one wasn't loud like Clem. He didn't tip his hat or holler a greeting. He rode straight to the sheriff's office, handed over a letter, and left without a word. Nolan Tate called for Wyatt before the dust had even settled. You need to see this, the sheriff said, holding up the envelope. It bore the seal of the U.S. Marshals. Wyatt took the letter, hand steady, and read. He read it twice. Then he handed it back and exhaled slowly. Well, Rosalie asked when he returned to the barn. They're sending someone to investigate Clem's death. A marshal. Official review. Damn, she muttered. You think it's trouble? Wyatt nodded. Trouble with a badge. Rosalie didn't flinch. Then we'll meet it head on. 3 days later, Marshal Silas Gray arrived. He was a tall man with silver hair and eyes like river stone, hard, cold, unmoved. He wore his badge like a shield and walked like he'd survived worse, places than Redemption Hollow could imagine. Wyatt met him on the edge of town. Marshal, he said. Calder. The man's voice was dry, clipped. Let's talk. They sat across from one another in the sheriff's office. Nolan hovered nearby but said nothing. Gray opened a leather-bound notebook. According to witness reports, you shot Clem Ryder at close range. Do you confirm that? I do. Why? He drew first. He meant to kill me. Gray nodded once, not writing anything down. Did you provoke him? No. He came looking for a fight. Were there any threats before this confrontation? Clem posted a bounty on me, got the town stirred up, endangered my son, the woman who took us in. Miss Rosalie? Wyatt's eyes narrowed. Yes. Gray's tone remained flat. You understand you're still wanted in some territories for crimes connected to the range dispute. I understand, Wyatt said, but I didn't light that fire, and I saved a boy from it. Gray stared at him for a long moment. Then, closed the notebook. I believe you, he said, but the law doesn't move on belief. Wyatt stood. Then what's next? I'll file a report. Recommend the charges be dropped, but that's not a promise. That's more than I expected. Gray looked him in the eye. You don't strike me as a murderer, Calder. You strike me as a man trying to live like he ain't got ghosts chasing him. Wyatt nodded. That's about right. The marshal left that night. By dawn, the weight of judgment had lifted, but the town was still watching. Forgiveness didn't come fast in a place like this. Rosalie took to visiting the town square more often, with Matthew on her hip and her rifle slung over her back. She smiled politely, tipped her hat, offered greetings. She reminded the people of Redemption Hollow what dignity looked like when it didn't apologize. And slowly, they softened. Wyatt took a job fixing fences. He worked long days under the sun, returned with cracked hands and dust in his beard. At night, he'd cradle Matthew until the boy fell asleep, then sit beside Rosalie on the porch. "You ever think you'd live this long?" she asked once. "Didn't plan to? You think you deserve it now?" He looked at her. I need to." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then you're already ahead of most." But peace was a fragile thing. And some men don't stay dead in spirit even if you put them in the ground. One night, a fire broke out in the general store. Flames reached into the sky like screaming fingers. Wyatt was the first there, tossing buckets with bare hands, choking on smoke. The townsfolk joined. The blaze was put out, but not before half the building was lost. Inside the smoldering wreckage, a message was found carved into the counter: "Justice never dies." Rosalie stared at it, face pale. "You think it's one of Clem's men?" Wyatt nodded grimly. He had followers, scared ones, angry ones. Sheriff Nolan shook his head. "You got rid of the head, but the tail's still thrashing." That night, Wyatt dug up his revolver and cleaned it in silence. Rosalie sat beside him. "You leaving?" "No," he said. "I'm drawing a line. We let one more spark catch and this whole place burns." The next day, Wyatt posted a note in the town square. "I won't run. I won't hide. If you've got unfinished business, face me now. No more fires, no more shadows." No one responded. But that night, Rosalie found Wyatt standing over Matthew's crib watching the boy sleep. "I thought you were past all this," she said. "I was," Wyatt replied, "but I can't protect him by pretending the world's fair." She stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him. "Then we face it together." A week passed. No more threats. No more fire. Just wind and work and the slow rebuilding of something worth keeping. Then one afternoon a boy came riding fast from the edge of town. "Riders!" he shouted. 4 of them, armed. Wyatt stepped outside, calm but ready. Rosalie stood beside him, rifle in hand. The riders appeared through the dust, weapons drawn. They stopped at the edge of the field. One dismounted. "You Wyatt Calder?" "I am." The man looked worn, bitter. "Clem was my brother." "I figured." "I want a duel." Wyatt didn't blink. "We're not doing this in front of my son." "Then meet me at the edge of Black Rock. Sunset." Wyatt nodded. "Alone." "Agreed." That evening, as the sky blazed crimson, Wyatt rode to Black Rock. The man was already there, pacing. They stood 10 paces apart. No words, just silence and the weight of blood. They drew. 2 shots rang out. Wyatt staggered, but stayed standing. His shot had struck true. The other man fell, breath escaping in a ragged wheeze. Wyatt approached, leaned down. "He wasn't worth dying for," he said. The man's eyes dimmed, but he nodded once, before going still. When Wyatt returned to the barn, Rosalie ran to meet him, eyes wide. "You're hurt," she said, touching his arm where the bullet had grazed. "I'll live." Matthew reached out from her arms, giggling. Wyatt took the boy, held him close. "It's over," he whispered. "Is it?" Wyatt looked around. The barn, the fields, the rising moon. Rosalie beside him. Matthew in his arms. "Yeah," he said. "It finally is." And in that quiet, in that peace carved out of chaos and pain, Wyatt Calder stood not as a fugitive, not as a gunslinger, but as a father, a partner, a man remade. The Wild West hadn't broken him, it had tempered him, and for the first time in his life, Wyatt wasn't running, he was home.